4 months ago, I posted my first LEGO Super Smash Bros. Minifigure video. And after all that time, I've now made every single fighter from the game as a LEGO minifigure. What started as me just making a few of my favorite characters from the game turned into the largest project I've ever documented on this channel, both in size and price-wise. So now for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to showcase all 90 of the Smash Bros. Fighters I made out of LEGO, starting with the original 12 for the very first game on N64. For our first custom Smash Bros. Minifigure, we've got the plumber that started it all, Mario. By using some unconventional pieces like Pinocchio's head, a Mickey torso, and some mid-length blue legs with brown plates for shoes, I think it conveys Mario's look pretty well. At least until LEGO finally ponies up and makes actual Super Mario minifigures instead of the interactive figures. I didn't make a custom LEGO creation for Donkey Kong, as I feel the version LEGO made is already sufficient. I do wish it was a little more size accurate in comparison to minifigure scale, but I can't really top LEGO with a custom build in terms of accurate design and looks, so we're gonna stick with the LEGO version for now. This minifigure right here is actually the reason this entire LEGO Super Smash Bros. Series started. Since the LEGO Legend of Zelda Deku Tree came out in September of 2024, I was smitten with recreating more of my favorite Nintendo games and characters in LEGO. I did decide to customize my Link minifigure a bit by giving him his boomerang as an accessory. I also made tons of other Zelda weapons and items in previous videos. Samus was one of the first characters I made for this series, as Metroid is one of my favorite Nintendo games other than Zelda, and Samus is one of my mains in the game as well. I was really happy with how I was able to make her arm cannon out of all legal building techniques, since there were just enough LEGO pieces that existed in the right colors. As much as I love my Samus build, I personally think my Dark Samus looks even better. This was due to more accurate pieces being available in dark blue and black over orange and yellow. I think I was able to get the shoulder armor to look better on Dark Samus as well, which really brings the whole figure together. Similar to Donkey Kong, I felt the version of Yoshi that LEGO made was sufficient for this series. It's also much more size accurate in comparison to minifigures than Donkey Kong is. But I did decide to give him an extra accessory with his iconic egg throw move. Kirby was a character I put off making for a very long time. I was racking my brain on just how to make the pink puffball and his iconic roundness. I eventually settled on a round 4x4 pink dome that worked perfectly, and you'll see that piece pop up a couple more times in this video for some other round characters. While I wish he was perfectly round on all sides and could be viewed correctly from any angle, making perfect spheres in LEGO is pretty difficult, especially on this small minifigure scale. And to everyone who commented on past videos saying he looks like a bird because of his mouth, I don't want to know what birds fly around where you live. For Fox, I decided to utilize LEGO Chima pieces due to their unique anthropomorphic animal characters. While the heads used for Chima minifigures are pretty horrific looking, the masks that they put over top of them look pretty good. They also have good tail options for a lot of characters, some of which you'll see later on. I'm sure serious LEGO fans will notice right away that I'm using a Mega Construx piece for Pikachu's face. FBI, open up! Whoa, before you rake me over the coals for this, LEGO Pokemon won't be a thing until 2026, so I had to get creative. And making Pokemon recognizable on a smaller minifigure scale is nearly impossible, so I did decide to cheat a little bit, but I assure you, every other piece in this build is pure LEGO. For Luigi, I reused some of the same pieces from my Mario minifigure. I also made a custom poltergust vacuum for Luigi as an accessory, which was honestly the more difficult part of this build. Once I figured out how to make Mario, Luigi was just a simple recolor. Ness was fairly easy to make because his face is already basically a standard LEGO minifigure face. By using an old pirate minifigure torso for Ness's shirt, his brown backpack, and a sideways red hat, it's pretty unmistakably Ness. I also wanted to utilize mid-length legs so I could make Ness's legs posable, which always helps bring minifigs to life just that little bit more. Perhaps one of my favorite minifigures I made out of the original 12 fighters, Captain Falcon turned out just how I wanted him to. I did have to take a torso from my Star Wars Cyril Karn minifig, which is a shame, but I think it was well worth it. With coming up with an accessory for Captain Falcon, I obviously had to give him his Falcon Punch! This baby dragon element introduced in the 2024 Ninjago sets was perfect to replicate that famous and iconic move. I only wish this shoulder armor piece was mirrored and meant for the other shoulder, but I think it still adds to the overall look of Captain Falcon pretty well. Like I said earlier, the pink 4x4 dome I used on Kirby returns for Jigglypuff. I thought Jigglypuff would be easy to design once I figured out how to build Kirby, but even though Jigglypuff looks so similar, the ears, eyes, and tuft of hair on the forehead were all crucial to get right in order for it to look just like Jigglypuff. Now that we've taken a look at the original 12 fighters, let's talk about some of the newcomers from perhaps the most competitive Smash Bros. Game.
Super Smash Brothers Melee!
Peach's design was luckily pretty easy since both of her legs and torso were pulled directly from the Series 24 Aristocrat minifigure. I wanted to portray Peach's billowing dress when she's floating like in the games, so this large leg piece was perfect for that, and naturally I also had to give her umbrella. It was also important that I found a hairpiece that had a pinhole on the top, so I could attach a crown, since she is a princess after all. Daisy's torso and legs were pretty easy to find good counterparts for, but her hair definitely gave me trouble. There aren't many dark orange hair pieces that resemble hers while also having a small pinhole for a crown, which was a non-negotiable for me. So I ended up using this pigtails piece that at least gets her bangs right and definitely the color of her hair. Bowser was another one of the few LEGO version characters that I was satisfied with using in place of a custom. To get the details just right in a small scale would have been hard while trying to stay true to his iconic look and design. Like Donkey Kong, I wish he was just a tad smaller to be in scale with minifigures, but it's not too outrageous of a size difference, especially to the point where I felt like I needed to make my own. I just can't compete with official LEGO printed tiles. Similar to Ness, the Ice Climbers Popo and Nana have very basic faces, so the standard minifigure faces will be used once again. Their mallets were especially fun to build, like using those 2x2 round wooden log tiles for detail. Unfortunately, there are no pink parka hood pieces, so this red hood from the Santa Darth Maul minifigure is the closest I'm able to get for Nana's pink hood. Sheik was a character I've been wanting to make in LEGO for a while, regardless of my LEGO Super Smash Bros. Project. I've made plenty of custom LEGO Legend of Zelda builds, so I was going to make Sheik eventually. For Sheik's torso, I used a Goblin King sticker from the LEGO Elves theme, which looks extremely similar to the Sheikah symbol from Zelda. I put it on the back of this gray torso, which I'll probably erase completely so the print doesn't ruin the look of the figure. I also utilized some white Technic rubber bands to simulate Sheik's cloth-wrapped wrists for some extra detail. Zelda has technically already been in LEGO form before in the Deku Tree LEGO set, however I wanted to portray her more classic-looking outfit that has been the staple for her Smash Bros. Appearances. I put some gold ring pieces on her wrists for gauntlets, and even made a custom Triforce symbol with triangular tiles to display along with her. And then to top it off, I used this orange fire accessory piece to represent Din's fire. Dr. Mario utilizes the same Pinocchio head and mustache that Mario and Luigi have. I used some mid-length legs just like Mario as well. However, my favorite part of the build was the custom pills I made. It's the most iconic part of Dr. Mario as a game and his character in Smash Bros. In my opinion, so I made sure to include them. By using some 1x2 round plates and 1x1 half oval tiles, they look just like the pills Dr. Mario throws in the game. Just like my Pikachu build, Pichu is going to use a Mega Construx face mixed with a LEGO body. I used a very simple yellow star piece as Pichu's body, which is almost too simple, but it's kind of crazy how fitting it is for Pichu and his tiny body and big head. He did seem a little lonely without any accessories, so I built him a thundercloud and lightning bolt coming down, just like his iconic move in the games. Just like Fox, Falco is going to utilize a Chima mask to cover up that ugly face as well. I also wanted to pay close attention to the blaster Falco uses, since his laser is blue unlike Fox's red laser. I'd also love to create Fox and Falco's iconic reflector move eventually somehow, so let me know in the comments if you have any ideas on how. Like many of the Fire Emblem characters we're going to cover in this video, Marth is of course going to have blue hair and a dark red cape. His sword, however, is a little more unique. I used the Barbarian sword from Series 25 and added on a gold rounded jumper with a translucent red tile for some extra detail. I also used the same shoulder armor from my Samus minifigure, just in dark blue this time. Speaking of dark blue, ideally his hair would be that color, but there are barely any LEGO hair pieces in dark blue for male characters, so regular blue is gonna have to do. Marth's Echo Fighter Lucina, on the other hand, does have a suitable dark blue hairpiece, one of the few in existence. I also used an unexpected headpiece that isn't your standard female minifigure face. Since Lucina wears an eye mask in Fire Emblem Awakening, I wanted to convey that properly. So by using a Luke Skywalker face that has a face shield printed on it, I was able to capture that iconic look from the game. And it makes her minifigure a little bit more interesting than just your standard female face. Like Zelda and Link, young Link was also an official LEGO minifigure in the Deku Tree set. To add some extra detail to this figure, I've used a technique from my LEGO Zelda Ocarina of Time items video and made Navi floating over Link's shoulder. I did this by using a green minifigure back bracket and some clear accessory holder pieces. I also wanted to reference one of my favorite taunts in the game, young Link chugging a bottle of Lon Lon milk. Like Sheik, it was only a matter of time before I made a custom Ganondorf minifigure, whether it was for my Smash Bros. Series or otherwise. By using a Hulk head, orange slicked back hair, and a Prince of Persia minifigure torso, it looks just like Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time. I also gave him his sword that he uses in his smash attacks and some purple magic in his hand to represent Warlock Punch. Here's hoping we can get an official minifigure for him and Sheik in the future. Mewtwo is the only Pokemon that I was able to make as an actual minifigure. I used a Chima head and mask again, as well as some legs from the Arakakra D&D minifigure. I used the eraser technique to get rid of the printing on these legs, because the shape of these legs were so perfect for Mewtwo, only needing some minor erasing modifications. After I built on some details on the back including a tail, I had myself a Lego Mewtwo. Roy was a really fun minifigure to make because unlike almost all the other Fire Emblem characters, he has some pretty unique attributes. I used a hairpiece from the Lego Exoforce sets. Since that theme was inspired by anime, it seems fitting that a Japanese RPG game character utilizes the same hair. I also enjoyed making his fire-emitting sword and his torso armor. I used the Series 26 Ice Planet minifigure's armor and erased the Ice Planet logo on the shoulder, which then made some really nice blue armor for Roy. Roy's Echo Fighter Chrom uses the same sword as Lucina both in the Fire Emblem games and here with these minifigures as well. I made that same sword assembly twice so they could both have an identical sword. I also used a technique where I swapped one of his legs with a different minifigure's legs since his armor is asymmetrical all over his body. And speaking of armor, I also added the same shoulder armor piece for my Captain Falcon minifigure. However, once again it's on the wrong shoulder, but like I said before, it's the overall look that counts. Mr. Game & Watch was a super fun character to build. He's so unique from any of the other characters I made, and building a character in all one color was nice so I didn't have to research a bunch of pieces to color match. It was also fun to make more geometric shapes with all his circles, but not feeling the need to be completely round like Kirby and Jigglypuff. For accessories, I gave him his flag move and my personal favorite of all of his moves, Chef.
My name is Jeff.
Up next, I'm going to show you some fighters from... Did that menu sound scare the shit out of anybody else when they were a kid? Similar to Kirby, I put off designing Meta Knight for a while, due to me not having any ideas on how to replicate the round body. But just like Kirby, we're going to use that same 4x4 round dome piece, this time in dark blue. After that, I added a 3x3 dish piece for Meta Knight's helmet and some yellow tiles for his eyes. Getting his hands just right to be able to hold his sword required a lot more brainstorming than you'd think, and same with getting his wings attached. But in the end, I think it all added up to make a great LEGO Meta Knight. Pit was actually one of the first minifigures I workshopped that made me want to design the entire Smash Bros. Roster. I was originally going to just design him for a single video, along with Samus and a couple others, but here I am 4 months later with 90 minifigures on my desk. What gave me the idea for Pit as a minifigure was the Arakakra from the D&D line of minifigures, and we saw it be useful once already for my Mewtwo minifigure. The wings immediately made me think of Pit and made me want to replicate him in LEGO form, even though I'm not a super fan of Kid Icarus or anything, but that piece was just too perfect not to use. Unfortunately, since the Arakakra wings are a new piece, they aren't in any other colors yet, so Dark Pit's black wings are different pieces entirely. However, once again, the D&D line of minifigures came in clutch here for Dark Pit's separated bow, which are knife pieces from the Gith Warlock. I also gave Dark Pit a physical cloth skirt for some extra detail, unlike Pit's that's just printed on his legs. Similar to Pit, Zero Suit Samus was one of the first few characters I designed. Like I mentioned before, Metroid is one of my favorite Nintendo franchises, so this was a really fun minifigure to design. Notable aspects that were a must for me to include were her jet boots and plasma whip blaster. I also wanted to portray her wrist gauntlets she has, so I utilized a technique where I cut Lego handcuffs in two and placed them on her arms like bracelets. I used this technique on Dark Pit as well, and a few other characters you'll see later on in this video. If I had one mission with my Wario minifigure, it was to give him a giant fart. His notorious flatulence has been crucial to his character ever since Super Smash Bros. Brawl, so I had to include it. I also gave him the cause of such bowel movements, a clove of garlic. I had a lot of people say I should have made his classic yellow costume instead, but since this is a Super Smash Bros. Series and that's his default costume in the game, I wanted to stay true to that design. But perhaps I'll make an alternative costume for him in the future. For Snake, I utilized a design from Mikey Briqmen, so all credit for the original design goes to him. I did, however, add some extra details and accessories, such as a pistol, grenade, and the Metal Gear Solid exclamation point over his head. I also gave Snake his most useful item in his arsenal, his iconic cardboard box. Ike is probably my least detailed Fire Emblem character, unfortunately. There's no blue hair with a headband that would work for him, so I instead focused on his torso and sword to make him recognizable. By using the same gold blade from Lucina and Crom's minifigures in conjunction with a 1x2 jumper plate and black lightsaber piece, I was able to nail down his sword's look just right. Even though Pokemon Trainer isn't an actual playable character in the Smash Bros. Series, I figured it would be easy enough to replicate them as a minifigure. Honestly, the hardest part of this minifigure was making the Pokeball accessory. I achieved this by taking 2 small dome pieces and connecting them together with this black Lego sticker strip in the middle. An extremely illegal technique, but a cool one nonetheless if I say so myself. Similar to my Pikachu and Pichu builds, I'm going to be using a Mega Construx head for Squirtle. Again, the rest of the build are all official Lego parts like a 2x2 round Koopa tile, 1x2 rounded plates, and even a minifigure arm for his tail. I'm hoping the 2026 LEGO Pokemon theme can create Pokemon in scale with minifigures just like this, and not just all large creature builds. For our last Pokemon that uses a Mega Construx head, Ivysaur unfortunately didn't have an exact color match for the rest of its body. LEGO's closest available color, dark turquoise, will have to do. They used to make light turquoise pieces a little over 20 years ago, but there are only 59 pieces in existence with that color, so not quite enough to work with to make an entire Pokemon. Either way, it was really fun for me to make Ivysaur's flower on his back. I make a lot of custom LEGO botanical builds in my free time that I don't usually showcase on this channel due to it being so different from my usual content. So this was a fun little build for me to bring some of that floral expertise to. Charizard is by far my favorite of all the Pokemon I made for this series. And based on the comments from my original video that it featured in, most of my audience seems to agree. Every single piece on this build is 100% original LEGO pieces, with the exception of the custom printed eye stickers that I gave him. The orange Harry Potter basilisk head that I used didn't have any eyes printed on it, so I needed to come up with a way to portray that. Otherwise I felt the build would lose its iconic Pokemon aesthetic and charm that makes Charizard recognizable. Diddy Kong was another LEGO original design that I felt was sufficient and didn't need my own custom version. I did however want to add some accessories though, so I gave him his super annoying slippery banana item and his iconic peanut pop gun for some fun extra details. Just like my Ness minifigure, I used a classic pirate torso and mid-length legs for Lucas. I could have used a classic minifigure face like Ness, but I found this child minifigure head that had a scared expression on it, which I think conveys Lucas's character pretty well. I also gave him his red snake as well for an accessory. Finally, another official LEGO minifigure other than the Zelda ones that I can have a break and just have some fun with. If you saw my Supersonic upgrade video, I detailed my process on how to make a Ring of Chaos Emeralds surrounding Sonic. And I used that build here as an accessory for my official Sonic minifigure. This King DDD design is not my own, but a recreation of a design by Eero Okkonen, a fellow LEGO fanatic and Finnish architect. The only things I changed in my version was largening the pom-pom on his hat and adding stars to the face of his hammer. I had a lot of trouble figuring out how to design this fat penguin, so once I came across this build in my research, I knew I couldn't beat it, so I got the proper parts to recreate it myself. This is my cry for LEGO Pikmin sets to be made, but we barely got LEGO Zelda after all these years, so I doubt it'll ever happen. Since everything in Pikmin is all in a shrunk-down world, you could have regular 2x4 bricks next to a minifigure and have it be in scale with the actual character's size. And let me toot my own horn real quick here, and talk about how impressed with myself I felt when I realized I could connect a white sausage piece to his helmet for an antenna. Pure genius. Lucario isn't perfectly in 1:1 minifigure scale, but there were barely any blue animal or Chima pieces that would work for this build, so I had to get creative and make it brick built instead. However, I do really enjoy what I was able to do with the minifigure arms on the back of his head for his aura sensors, and the bird's nest for his tuft of hair on his chest as well. Rob was one of the easier characters to translate into LEGO due to his more geometric and robotic proportions. Brainstorming how to do his midsection and cord running around the back was really fun, and is probably one of my best builds out of all the Brawl characters. Toon Link by far was the most difficult of the Zelda fighters to recreate in LEGO form. If you saw my full-length video on how I came to design this character, you'd know my process was way more extensive than I thought it would be. And finding the head for him alone took a lot of deliberation and effort to make it right once I got it. But from the very beginning, I knew I wanted to use a curved 2x2 tile piece for his hero's shield and a white Harry Potter wand for the Wind Waker, which are perfect accessories for him. Wolf utilizes another Chima head mask just like Fox, Falco, and the less related Mewtwo. I reused that handcuff technique from Zero Suit Samus and even made a custom blaster for him. Fox and Falco's blasters are pretty basic and the same as each other's, but Wolf's has a fang on the bottom and a distinct purple laser, so I had to make sure I included those iconic details.
Continue.
Now on to the fighters from the next game in the series, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, or just known as Smash 4. Since my video where I debuted my villager minifigure, I've updated it a little bit. Originally he just had a blank red torso, but I found this sports jersey torso with the number 11 on it. I then erased the second 1 on the torso to replicate the 1 on the villager's shirt in the game. I'll probably eventually erase the printing on the back as well, just so it looks a little bit better. For accessories, I gave him his bug net, axe, and even a tree to cut down. Mega Man was mostly a simple character to replicate in LEGO form, aside from his arm cannon. Unlike my Samus and Dark Samus minifigures, the pieces they required to connect an arm cannon don't come in blue for Mega Man, so I had to break the law a little bit. Basically, I cannibalized a minifigure hand and cut the wrist off of the hand part and placed it inside this blue round brick to connect to the arm from within the brick. Kind of insane building gymnastics I had to do, but no one would know just from looking at it. So don't be a tattletale. Wii Fit Trainer is another very simple minifigure, but if I do say so myself, it turned out extremely well. Her design yields itself to LEGO form really well. The only thing I deliberated on was her face. At first I considered just using a blank white minifigure head, but once I found this Harry Potter ghost minifigure face, I figured I should use it for some extra detail. Rosalina was a character I knew would translate well into LEGO form as well, mostly because of the star character from the Disney Wish sets being such a good replica for Luma. I also used it for replicating Tri from Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom in a different video. I've never seen or probably ever will see the movie, but hey, thanks for the assist, Disney. Also some special thanks to the Wicked themed LEGO sets. I used Galinda's hair from those sets for Rosalina's iconic over-eye swept bangs, which also luckily had a small pinhole on the top for a chrome crown. Oh, Little Mac, my favorite of the lowest tier characters in Smash Bros. He was actually my main in Smash 4, don't ask me why, but he was just so fun to me. Naturally, I gave him little minifigure legs and his KO punch meter behind him. I also wanted to pay close attention to the skin tone on this minifigure. While most of the characters in this series used light nougat colored heads, there are a select few I paid extra close attention to the skin tone and depicted them appropriately, Little Mac being one of them. Aside from Charizard, I think Greninja is my favorite Pokemon build that I made. I was able to maintain very close to minifig scale with this one, and I can't say that confidently with all my Pokemon builds. Once I figured out what I wanted to do for his torso, which is the same piece as R2-D2's body actually, it was fairly easy from there. In conjunction with some minifigure accessory holders, which were my saving grace for many of the characters I built for this series, some triangular tiles, and some cool water shuriken pieces, I'm really proud with how this one turned out. The first of the Mii Fighters, the Brawler, actually uses 2 pieces from different LEGO Marvel minifigures, Shang-Chi's torso and Spider-Man's legs. The heads for all the Mii Fighters are going to utilize 3 different classic LEGO minifigure heads to portray their simple faces compared to the other humanoid and detailed minifigure faces used on the rest of the fighters. The Mii Brawler uses a classic Rebel Soldier / Starkiller face, due to the eyebrows looking pretty similar to the default Mii Brawler's face. The Mii Sword Fighter uses a classic Luke Skywalker minifigure face and some spiky blonde hair. He also has a custom sword build and a flipped torso to give the illusion of his scabbard strap across his chest. For the legs, I used the Series 24 Blue Falconer leg piece to portray the Sword Fighter's tunic that goes past his waist. The Gunner was probably the most challenging of the Mii Fighters to design. She actually possesses pieces from 3 different Star Wars characters: Leia's head, Anakin's classic hair, and Rowan Freemaker's torso. But those were the easy parts. Once again, I was tasked with making a 4th arm cannon for this series, this time in yellow and silver. Luckily enough, the Series 22 robot minifigure had a yellow arm with a stud connection that would work great for the Gunner. The most fun part about designing Palutena was easily making her staff and shield. Since I enjoy making so many Legend of Zelda weapons and items out of LEGO, this was right up my alley. By using a good mix of gold and blue pieces, I think I replicated her gear really well. And of course I had to recreate her iconic green hair, which was actually almost impossible due to there being only one green hair option that was long. All the others were short to mid-length, so shout out to the Everyone is Awesome set for having what I needed. For our final Smash Bros. Character that utilizes the precious 4x4 round dome, it's Pac-Man. Thank God this thing came in yellow, otherwise I'd be screwed. It was fun to use the infamous macaroni pieces for his arms and a yellow bionicle eye for his nose. I also couldn't really put any accessories in his hands due to his gloves being Technic ball joints with no connection points, so I opted to give him his fire hydrant ability for his accessory. One of the few Fire Emblem characters without blue hair, Robin, uses a Ninjago torso and a black cloth waist piece for his robe. I also gave him his tomes and Levin sword as an accessory. Robin is also the first Fire Emblem character on the roster where you're able to choose between the male and female variant. I didn't make both of them, but I focused on the female variants for the other Fire Emblem characters coming up. Coincidentally, the character right after Robin actually uses the same hairpiece as him, just in a different color. Getting Shulk's look just right was tough since his game's aesthetic for clothing is very unique. The one common thread I noticed though was a lot of buckles with no purpose, so I gave him arms with buckles printed on them from Tasha the Witch Queen. His Monado was fun to build due to its unique color and shape for a sword. The Ninjago Arrow blade piece came especially in handy here, so I could add a blue translucent center to the blade. Bowser Jr. is the last of the Super Mario figures that I didn't opt to make a custom for. Once again, he's a little too big for minifig scale, but I really can't beat the unique printed pieces and clown car that LEGO gave him. I'd be doing a disservice to the design of the character and it wouldn't look nearly as good, even if the scaling would be better than LEGO's. As hilariously simple as Duck Hunt was to make, it didn't come without its challenges. While it was pretty easy to find a dog that resembled it, the duck was a bit tougher. There aren't any LEGO ducks in minifig scale that match the colors of Duck Hunt, so I opted for a seagull instead. Close enough, right? I also decided to make a soda can and clay pigeon for Duck Hunt's accessories. And if you look closely at the soda can you recognize a reference to another Smash Bros. Character? Ryu had some great piece options to pull from. I wish I had more insight to share on the development of this character, but thankfully he was a rather easy one to make in comparison to so many of these convoluted and frankly expensive parts for other characters in the roster. Ken wasn't too difficult to design either, thanks to a lot of Ninjago pieces again. I gave Ken a regular Hadouken for his accessory to contrast from Ryu's orange Shakunetsu Hadouken. For his head, I used a piece from a Vacation Batman figure to get Ken's signature smirk and eyebrows replicated perfectly. Cloud had some really good options for me to pull from the pantheon of LEGO pieces. While I wish Exo-Force hair came in blonde, this spiked hair alternative works really well too. Adding the spiked shoulder armor was a must, as well as this Ninjago Shadow Blade. While Cloud's sword is different in color, I think this sword resembles the shape really well. I've seen a lot of people make brick-built swords for Cloud, and perhaps I'll do that eventually as well, but this sword works great as is. For Corrin, I opted for the female variant. This is because male Corrin's hair is pretty similar to Robin's, and I didn't want to reuse the same hairpiece for two characters in the same series that aren't supposed to look the same. Most of the Fire Emblem characters that don't have gender variants are male too, so I figured we should represent the ladies some more here. Her sword was especially cool to make with this gold saw blade piece, and I even added some pink fire on top as well for some extra detail. Bayonetta might just be my best fighter from Smash 4 overall. I wish I was able to pack this much detail into every figure I made. Between her butterfly wings, shoulder cloth pieces, blue drills for guns, and bracket pieces for heels, this minifigure is the spitting image of Bayonetta. Especially when you consider how perfect the minifigure head and hairpiece are at replicating Bayonetta's look. And finally, it's time for fighters from the latest game in the franchise, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Inkling was a pretty tricky character to pin down design-wise. I knew I wanted to use a head from The Incredibles for the Inkling's distinct eyes, but the hair gave me some trouble. You see, of course I wanted an ink tank strapped to the Inkling's back, but the hairpiece that was perfect in the front wasn't so perfect in the back. It was too long to connect the ink tank where I wanted, so let's just say I got a little creative with some scissors. Just like Sakurai and the developers of the Smash Bros. Games, I put this one off for a long time due to his size. Some of the comments on my original video for him have been saying that I should have made his head one stud wide and not two. And while I agree it would be more accurate, with only one stud wide, it would be difficult to add detail in the face the way I wanted, like having more teeth and making it open at an angle. Though perhaps eventually I'll modify it if I'm bored one day. Simon is going to be the last character to utilize the split handcuff technique. Something that I deliberated a lot with Simon was his whip. I wanted to use this spiked mace ball piece for the end of his whip, but it's rather expensive to acquire, and I was already spending way too much money on this project, so I decided to cut costs where I could. So I made my own whip for him by using a lightsaber hilt, short chain, and 1x1 convex pyramid piece. I may eventually cave and update it with the more accurate piece, but this'll do for now. The final Echo Fighter in the series, Richter, is going to use the same whip build as Simon. There wasn't a hairpiece that had a white bandana, so I compromised and used one that had a blue one, since the rest of his outfit is blue anyway. I did also have to use the eraser technique on his legs, as they had some unwanted printing on the left leg, but after I did that, it's pretty unmistakably Richter. Similar to Ridley, I procrastinated with making King K. Rool until the very end, because I knew he was going to be a large undertaking. Literally. This one was somewhat poetic for me to design towards the end, because it really tested me in my Lego building skills. Trying to get all these characters in minifig scale was my goal, but some of them just got a little too big while building. But I couldn't just pass up great detailing in favor of minifigure scale every time, so King K. Rool is definitely too big in comparison to a minifigure, but luckily he is pretty on par with the Donkey Kong buildable figures, which is a compromise I can accept. Luckily Isabelle has an official Lego variant. All I had to do for her was make a custom accessory. I wanted to make a gyroid rocket for her, but without some kind of special printing or stickers, it wasn't going to look perfect. so I opted for her toy hammer move instead. The final Pokemon in the series, Incineroar, was a little bit easier to brick build than Greninja and Lucario. The thing that gave me the most trouble, honestly, was his fire belt. I wanted to try and wrap it around his whole body, but eventually I just opted for the front so I could move on to other characters. I also knew right away from the start that I wanted to use these solid red colored flame pieces to portray his tufts of hair on his head. Technically, Piranha Plant already has an official LEGO variant, but I knew I could find a way to make one more in scale with minifigures. There were 2 collectible minifigures that would be crucial to this build: the Series 18 Flower Pot Girl and the Series 25 Mushroom Sprite. Trying to connect both of the mushroom caps upside down from each other was quite the annoying task, but I think the end result was well worth the trouble. While I wish there was a white eye mask minifigure head out there, this Robin head will do just fine for Joker. I also gave him a black cat to represent Morgana, his knife, and the best Smash Bros move in the game other than Wario's fart. Gun! I had a lot of people requesting I make Arsene alongside Joker, but to be honest, I know almost nothing about the Persona series to do it justice. And I'm making 89 other characters for this series. Nothing is ever enough for you people!
Ha! Almost lost my cool there.
Eero was fun to make because of his unique sword, shield, and skirt piece. The shield was fun because while I could have just put a 2x3 blue tile on the gold shield and called it a day, I found this LEGO sticker that resembled the logo on Eero's shield pretty closely, so I added it for some extra detail. Another detail I wanted to get right was his green boots, so I put some 1x1 plates to the bottom of his legs. Banjo-Kazooie is the last minifigure that's going to utilize a Chima mask, so shout out to the LEGO Chima theme for helping me create so many of the anthropomorphic animals in this series. Similar to some of my minifigures like Mario and Inkling, I used mid-length legs in conjunction with some 1x1 plates for Banjo's feet. Making Kazooie was pretty fun too. At first I considered using a phoenix from Harry Potter sets, but decided to brick build Kazooie instead. It's a very simple assembly of less than a dozen pieces, and gets the job done really well. Luckily, Terry has a pretty simple design with some jeans, a white shirt, and a red jacket. Thank goodness. I was glad to see there was a red Lego hat with a blonde ponytail that works as well. I don't know much about the Fatal Fury games, but in Smash Bros. His moves are colored in both blue and orange, so I represented those here with the same pieces I used for Ken and Ryu's Hadoukens. The last of our blue-haired Fire Emblem characters, Byleth actually had a dark blue option for her hair like Lucina did. So good on the ladies for having dark blue hair possibilities, unlike all my male Fire Emblem characters who just have regular blue hair. This hair has pigtails on it technically, but the overall shape and length of the piece matches pretty well for Byleth. Min was by far the longest character I made for this series. Those hose pieces I used for the arms do come in slightly shorter variants, but I kinda like how absurdly long these ones are, cause it's kinda funny. I also made the default Ram and Dragon fists on the end of her arms. This one was a fun departure from regular minifigure parts, and is probably one of the best DLC fighters I made. Next up, our final official LEGO minifigure in the roster.
Who are you?
I'm Steve.
Thankfully, I can rest easy with this character, and I don't have to do any crazy piece hunting, illegal building techniques, or erase any prints. However, I did change Steve's legs to mid-length purple legs, and added some gray 1x1 plates on the bottom to be more accurate to his design in the games. The main thing I needed to give Sephiroth was his obnoxiously long sword, but a secondary detail that was a little harder to add was his single wing. Since Sephiroth has shoulder armor and long hair, it's difficult to add a back bracket to clip the wing onto. So for the first time in this entire series of characters, I'm using minifigure accessory holders for actually holding accessories, so I can connect that single wing onto them and place it behind him. Pyra and Mithra were some of the most difficult minifigures to design, due to how detailed and specific their Xenoblade aesthetic is. I relied mostly on correct color matching, as well as capes and skirts in the right places to replicate their design. I'm still not 100% satisfied with them in their current form. I have gotten some good design suggestions, so I'll probably implement them in the future. Special thanks to one of my fans, David, who emailed me with a lot of good possible pieces to use. Kazuya was another character similar to Little Mac, where it was important to me to properly color match his skin tone when translating it to minifigure form. In order to stay true to that skin tone, I spent a lot of time sourcing the right torso for him, and eventually settled on this cowardly lion torso that has fur lines, which portray the scars on his chest really well. I also gave him some pink lightning as an accessory, since a lot of his moves emit that energy. Sora gave me a chance to flex my minifigure weapon making once more, this time with his Keyblade. It's nearly perfect aside from the yellow hilt piece being a circle instead of a square, but other than that, I'm really proud with how this one turned out. This is another case like Cloud, where Exoforce hair in natural colors like blonde or brown would come in handy here, but as long as it's spiky, it gets the point across. But once again, that Keyblade? Chef's kiss right there, dude. If you've made it this far in the video,
Congratulations!
this project took months to complete, and I'm glad it's finally completed. If this is the first video in this series that you're seeing, don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for my future projects. And thank you to all of you who have been here since the beginning and followed along with the process as well. Sound off in the comments what minifigures or builds you'd like to see next on my channel, and I'll see you all next time.